Good evening and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Wednesday the 11th of August and this is Scotland at 7. I'm Andrew Wilson and this evening I'm hosting the programme from Edinburgh. First we'll look at today's coronavirus update. Then, if he's able to join us, I will introduce this evening's guest, and then we will look at some of the stories behind the news headlines together. As of 2 p.m. today, since the start of the pandemic, a total of 2,548,101 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government's regional testing centres. Of these, 2,190,184 have been confirmed negative, and 357,917 have tested positive. There are 1,498 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. I'm very sorry to say that there are 10 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of people in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 8,013. This number includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 356 were in hospital last night, 42 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. this morning, 4,034,420 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 3,375,524 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures up until yesterday show that 130,607 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from the illness, and that's an increase of 104 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just in hospitals. As it's Wednesday today, we also have an update from National Records of Scotland. As at the 8th of August, 10,421 deaths have been registered in Scotland where the novel coronavirus was mentioned on the death certificate, according to the statistics published by National Records of Scotland yet today. In the week between the 2nd and 8th of August, 51 deaths were registered that mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, and that's an increase of 5 deaths from the previous week. 15 deaths were of people aged under 65, 13 were people aged between 65 and 74, and there were 23 deaths of people aged 75 or over. 43 deaths were in hospitals, 3 were in care homes, and 5 were at home or in a non-institutional setting. Deaths from all causes were 7% above the 5-year average for this week of the year. Most excess deaths are still happening at home, with home and non-institution deaths 33% above the average in the most recent week. Now, let's see if we're able to be joined by our guest this evening. We're lucky enough to be joined this evening by a great friend to the programme, Chris McCusker. Chris has been an aid worker and disabilities advocate amongst many other roles, and is a member of the SNP's Trades Union Group, Friends of Palestine Group, and Socialists Group. Chris, it's been far, far too long since you and I last spoke. How are you keeping this evening?
It certainly has been, Andrew. Yeah, I'm doing well, and nice to be back on the show.
It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Our top story this evening is that bosses have confirmed that the McVitie's Tollcross factory will close next year, with hundreds thrown out of work. The factory owner Pladis has confirmed it will pull the plug on the Victoria Biscuit Works in 2022, after almost a century of continuous manufacturing. Plans to save the historic factory in the East End of Glasgow have failed, with bosses confirming the plant will be closed next year. Site owners dropped the bombshell news earlier today, condemning more than 400 people to lose their jobs over the next 12 months. The factory has been in continuous operation for almost a century, and is best known for producing McVitie's branded products, including favourites such as digestives, hobnobs and rich tea. A working group involving SNP ministers Glasgow City Council and trade unions had last month put forward a rescue plan with a view to keeping the factory open. But in a statement, Pladis UK Director David Murray said, "We know this news will be difficult for our colleagues at Tollcross, so it is with regret that we announce our intention to proceed with the proposal to close the site." Pladis is home to some of Britain's best-loved brands, which have been part of the fabric of our society for some nearly 200 years. In order to protect them for generations to come, we must take steps to address excess capacity in the UK. Politicians have slammed Pladis for failing to engage constructively with alternative proposals to retain manufacturing on the site. Glasgow City Council leader Susan Aitken said, "I'm very disappointed with the decision that Pladis has come to, and the abrupt way it is announced, with absolutely no regard for the workforce or a community that has supported the business for so long." The partners in the action group put forward a significant proposal that would have secured jobs and a future for the company in Glasgow. There was an understanding from Pladis to seriously engage with that proposal, but, frankly, I just don't think it has. We had no warning that this announcement was coming, no explanation of why the proposal had been rejected, and, most concerningly, no meaningful detail on alternatives for the workforce. Deputy First Minister John Swinney said, "This announcement from Pladis is extremely disappointing. The Scottish Government, alongside Glasgow City Council, GMB and Unite Union, are equally perplexed at this decision, as the Pladis CEO gave firm assurances to the First Minister and I in July that they remained committed to working with us to review the proposal submitted by the Action Group, a serious proposal that aims to support Pladis to retain a factory in Glasgow and secure the jobs at risk. Our overriding priority remains the welfare of the staff and their families, and we want to reassure them that we will leave no stone unturned in trying to find a positive outcome. Should Pladis decide to reject the proposals of the Action Group and proceed with the closure, the Scottish Government will put steps in place to support staff who may be facing redundancy." So, Chris, what's your immediate reaction to this news from Tollcross this morning?
To say that I'm not surprised would be an understatement, to be honest with you, Andrew. Having had direct contact with David Linden with regarding this, the SNP trade union point of view, the Scottish Government have offered Pladis many alternatives, even one where would see the site demolished and relocated to the part of the pop. Haven't engaged. From day one, they have single-mindedly wanted to close this plant down. I hate to be the one to correct your good self, but I think off the top of my head, it's 528 jobs that are due to be shelved. And as you quite rightly pointed out, it's 100 years of biscuit manufacturing which going to be lost. And what we can't understand is the fact that there is no decline in the McVitie's product. In fact, since lockdown began, the national lockdown throughout the UK, biscuit eating was up, and their production has been up. And this is it could be seen as the fact the company just didn't want to invest in Scotland, because it wasn't profitable enough for them. Yes, the site is, needing, some TLC, but by, the day, that comes from commitment from good employers. So it's a sad day all round. The workers, many workers, it's been a family transition from school straight into the McVitie's plant, and loyal service, and it's sadly not being reciprocated by the current management.
Thanks, Chris. We'll move on to our second story now, and that is that workplace testing is being rolled out to boost COVID recovery. Organisations with 10 or more employees can now sign up for asymptomatic workplace testing as part of an enhanced drive to identify emerging coronavirus cases and break chains of transmission. Free lateral flow device tests have been made more widely available as the country emerges from lockdown restrictions and moves beyond level 0. The testing regime is voluntary, and organisations can adopt an LFD collect model to distribute amongst workers or implement their own asymptomatic test site model in workplaces. Workplace testing in Scotland had previously been targeted at prioritised areas of the public sector, critical national infrastructure, and private businesses with higher transmission rates. Workplace testing will initially be offered until the end of September 2021, in line with the universal testing offer. It will include testing for formal volunteers from third sector organisations. So Chris, you have experience as a trades unionist. How does this latest interface between the workplace and the public health response to the pandemic, how does it strike you?
Well, I mean, this is a great initiative and proactive approach to supporting business, going forward. I mean, now that we find ourselves in minus level 0, and many businesses going, people going back to, call centres and offices and such like. This will be a great supporting tool. People do actually sadly contract the virus. At least it will, give a good indication, and it will allow business to actually take, preventative measures. I obviously, show a bit of care towards the staff as well.
Thanks, Chris. And what risks or problems can you foresee? Well, do you think that employers, workers, and public health bodies will be able to make this work satisfactorily?
I think, yes, there is a good level of reporting and communicating. It's, to my mind, if it's done in this, I hate to use the word controlled manner, then, and I mean controlled, I mean as in, the two-way working, because it is done to participate into foremost, not mandatory. So you're entering into a verbal that the Scottish Government have suggested an able for you to look after your staff, and if you comply with that, then you're entering into a sort of a verbal agreement that you're willing to participate in it should actually forage good working practice.
Thanks, Chris. We'll move now to Europe, and German police have arrested a UK national on suspicion of spying for Russia. German police have arrested a man who worked at the British Embassy in Berlin on suspicion of spying for Russian intelligence in exchange for cash, according to German prosecutors. Germany's highest public prosecutor said the man, identified only as David S., was arrested at his Potsdam apartment at 2:20 p.m. on Tuesday, and his home and embassy workplace were searched. The 57-year-old UK national, who does not hold diplomatic immunity, is suspected of having worked for a Russian intelligence agency since at least November 2020, passing on documents he had acquired through his work to a handler. He is alleged to have received cash payments of an as yet unspecified sum in exchange for information. Germany's public prosecutor said the arrest was the result of a joint investigation by German and British authorities. The Metropolitan Police said the investigation into David S. had involved Scotland Yard's counter-terrorism officers. So, Chris, with your John le Carre, or more properly George Smiley hat on for a moment, I thought the Cold War ended when the wall came down in November '89. What's going on here?
Yeah, yeah. It seems a bit bizarre. I seem to remember there was a similar situation. I think the group were called the Birmingham Five, was it, or something like that, or the Birmingham Four. Yeah, it was all very cloak and dagger. There was one leading female. There was a female double agent who was working for the UK government and also working for the Russians as well. And I think that they were selling secrets and whatnot and what have you. I believe that this chap wasn't at a level where he was dealing in top secret information, but I'm led to believe the article that I read in Reuters, or Reuters, should I say, it was sensitive enough to cause concern. And when you're obviously things on the quiet for cash, there's a lot of questions to be asked about that. As to when I was reading the article, it struck me as to that they've yet to find the account of where the money went to and how much it was actually paid. So it's very early stages, and it also said at the end of that that the German police can't comment any further outside working hours. Bit bizarre.
Yes, I saw that. We'll be talking about another Brexit story in a moment, but it's interesting to see London and Berlin police forces collaborating like this after Brexit. Do you think that's maybe because this is in fact such a serious matter?
I think yes. I would. I obviously I want London, Berlin, Paris, Munich, whoever, London to collaborate, with Europe, where possible, especially when it comes down to levels of security. I would like to say I'm heartened by the fact that they've been sort of like collaborating and being proactive about this. I think had this maybe have been another issue, people trafficking or something like that, I'm too sure that the London government would have been so quick off the mark.
No, that's a very good point, Chris. And we'll move to that Brexit story next, making the link between Europe and Scotland now. Brexit has halved the number of EU students studying in Scotland. The number of students from Europe who have been accepted onto a university course in Scotland has more than halved compared to last year. According to UCAS, the percentage of students living in Europe who have applied to study at universities in Scotland has dropped by 56% compared to 2020. The figures have been described as deeply concerning by the President of the National Union of Students, Scotland, who blames astronomical fees EU students now have to pay as a result of Brexit. Commenting, the SNP MSP Claire Adamson said, "Yet again we see the opportunities of young people being squeezed by the UK government and their Brexit obsession. Not only are European students losing out on studying at some of the best universities in the world, but students in Scotland are missing out on the diversity and learning experience that comes from students who come from other countries. The Tories will try and hide behind the pandemic, but the truth is that applications from non-EU countries, such as China and the USA, have increased compared to last year. The blame lies solely with the Tories and Brexit." So, Chris, how deeply concerned are you about this news?
I'm very concerned about this news because this is a subject that's close to my heart. I think if in one of our conversations, Andrew, I think you'll remember I was telling you that my youngest son, after studying a 4-year course at Aberdeen in politics, he had applied to the EU for a job in Brussels and got through to 3 different interviews, or 3 rounds of interviews, and wasn't seeing the third one. And he firmly believes, quite simply, it's because he was, in inverted commas, British. So, I mean, he was then not forced, but he took the choice to do a postgrad at Strathclyde, which, selfishly suited me because I got another year of him being around, which is great. But I mean, he doesn't know what he's going to do. He finished that postgrad. He's handed his dissertation in. A Polish girlfriend. They want to go back to Europe, whether it's Poland or it's Belgium, and he doesn't know where he's going from now. He's firing off applications and not getting any replies.
It's an interesting point that you make there, Chris. Thinking in particular in this context about our young people. What impact do you, from your experience and elsewhere, what impact do you think these experiences of doors being closed, of costs being significantly increased, and of opportunities being taken away, what impact do you think that is having on our young people?
It's going to have vast impact on them socially. From the point of view, I mean, I wish I had done it because I was 20. I wish I had, taken a year out and worked in the Costa Brava or wherever. It just wasn't an avenue that was willing to me at that point in time. But, I mean, since, funnily enough, actually, 6 years ago, I left Glasgow Airport. And I'm now what I would consider myself better travelled, because from my elder generation, I've been to Gdansk, Prague, I've been to Berlin. As you know, I try where possible to go over to France to help the refugees in Calais. So I've been in and out of Paris and stuff like that. And just even visiting cities is, mind blowing in itself. It expands, obviously. I don't know who it was said, who famously said, but it was travel broadens and so I mean, if it impacts an old 54 like myself, who's just starting out and so it's seriously going to hamper them, again, it's simply pointed out the fact that this has nothing to do with the pandemic. This is the effects of Brexit.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. And we'll think a little bit further about young people and their interests with the next story, because exam results in England benefit pupils at private schools as the gap with state education widens there. The gap between private and state school A-level grades has grown to its widest in the modern era as part of a record-breaking set of results in which black pupils and male pupils also received lower grades than their peers. After a year of disruption and school closures during the pandemic, nearly 45% of A-level entries across England, Wales and Northern Ireland were awarded top grades of A or A star, and that's up from 38% in 2020 and 25% in 2019. But teacher-assessed grades, which replaced exams across the UK, disproportionately benefited those at independent schools, where the proportion of top grades rose 9 percentage points to 70%, compared with 6 percentage points elsewhere in England. In Scotland, the poverty-related attainment gap is narrower than in 2019, although slightly wider than in 2020. Speaking yesterday, Education Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville said that closing the poverty-related attainment gap and ensuring every young person has the chance to fulfil their potential remains central to her work. The Scottish Government are investing a further £1 billion over the course of this Parliament to help close that gap. So, Chris, first of all, what does this news tell you about the state of education in England?
Well, basically it tells me that it's very, very one-sided. It's top-heavy, to the elite who are able to go to Cambridge and Eton, and the other well-established seats of learning. And, it's harder for people from disadvantaged background, BAME backgrounds, and, to try it in. And what's happening is that they are being disadvantaged when applying for, future roles, because they don't come from, a university background. I was listening to a discussion today on the James O'Brien show on LBC, and I was heartened actually to hear that there's an awful lot, that there are an awful lot of government-led initiatives, which is operated by not only the NHS. You can actually go into the NHS as a assistant nurse and do grades as you work, and get your professional credentials that way. And I believe that Transport have got a similar initiative as well. But obviously, as a trade unionist, I'm all for modular as an alternative to 4 years at university. Back to the previous chat that we were having about universities, is the fact that I'm concerned that my son has spent 5 years at university and he won't get the job that he wants because the opportunities are closed to him. I mean, obviously, he would, it would probably fall over the Scottish Parliament if they offer him, like 30 grand a year in order to, apply his mind in the Scottish Parliament. But, I think he would much rather get 30 euros and have a better quality of life in, Europe. And I mean a better quality of life, not the fact that Scotland's not offering a good quality of life, but again, just the heritage, the diversity, climate, obviously, the experience of working in another country, the experience of talking another language. Solutions on it are vast, and what it seems to be, this report, it seems to be that it only benefits the people who can actually afford to pay for university fees, and actually graduate through schools in order to get the universities on a attainment basis.
Absolutely, Chris, and it's an interesting point that you make there earlier. In Scotland, a political system led by somebody who went to Greenwood Academy, and in England, a political system led by somebody who attended Eton and then went with his father's help to Oxbridge. Do you think that tells us something about a comparison between the two countries?
Well, of course it does. I mean, I harken back to the days when I was in, the natural progression for me was to, as soon as get an apprenticeship. University wasn't spoken about, and I mean, I'm eternally grateful to the Scottish government the fact that my sons have went through university. One of them has got the not exactly the job of his dreams, but he's got the job that he's qualified to do. He just wishes that he could get paid more for it. But so they've benefited out of the Scottish system and done well. Whereas people in England have went through the system and because their name is not hyphenated, shall we say, De Piffle or Rees Mogg, they are not, the Bullingdon Club, then, they are often stagnated. And you do often find that there are people with PhDs and, higher degrees and diplomas, and, they are not jobs that they are qualified to do.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Returning to Scotland now, Scottish Greens have welcomed the news that the courts will review the Scottish Government Minister's ability to seek an unexplained wealth order on Donald Trump's acquisition of Scottish golf courses. Campaign group Avaz has today been given permission to seek a judicial review of the decision by the Scottish Government not to back a Scottish Greens motion in February to pursue an unexplained wealth order, also known as a McMafia order. The mechanism was introduced in 2018 to help authorities fight money laundering and to target the illicit wealth of foreign officials. In February, the Scottish Government said such decisions should be free of political interference. However, the Scottish Greens contest this, insisting that ministers have the sole responsibility to seek such an order. Scottish Greens co-leader Patrick Harvie, who brought the motion in February, said, "I'm glad we are a step forward in getting some clarity over why Trump's business dealings in Scotland haven't been investigated." Now, Chris, we know that Donald J. Trump has any number of legal proceedings and investigations underway around the world. Why do you think the Scottish Government is apparently so reticent to join all of those proceedings and investigations?
Right. Well, I'm not privy to that level of information, but my own thought is the fact that if Donald Trump doesn't own the golf course in Aberdeen and somebody, then who does? Or who could? Who could actually? If the Scottish Government were to seize the assets of Donald J. Trump and sell the golf course, who are they going to sell it to? So sometimes better dealing with the devil you know than the devil you don't, and I just don't see. There's no way that Turnberry could be turned round into a kind of like a council-owned golf course. No will in the world. Bearing in mind that there's dramatic cuts in many council administrations across Scotland, and quite a lot of the public golf courses have had to close. So, you're left with, if it's not Donald Trump, then it's, could it be sold, would David Lloyd buy them, or, some other corporate interest? Because, I mean, these are, let's face facts, these are prestigious golf courses. I'm speaking for, I would love to be able to play Turnberry. I'd love to be able to play the club that he owns up in Aberdeen. But they are outreach. So it's a strange one. I could see why Patrick Harvey's for the questions to be asked, but the same token to see, the Scottish Government saying, well, at the end of the day, is it really their business? You had one, Andrew. It really is.
No, absolutely, Chris. Thank you. In other international news, the Taliban could take Kabul in 90 days. Taliban fighters could isolate Afghanistan's capital in 30 days and possibly overrun it in 90, according to a US defense official, as militants took control of an 8th provincial Afghan capital. The official, speaking to Reuters on condition of anonymity, said that the new assessment of how long Kabul could stand was a result of the rapid gains the Taliban had been making around the country as US-led forces leave. The official added that this is not a foregone conclusion and that Afghan security forces could reverse the momentum by putting up more resistance. The Taliban now control 65% of Afghanistan and have taken or threatened to take 11 provincial capitals. All entry points to Kabul, which lies in a valley surrounded by mountains, are choked with civilians fleeing violence elsewhere, making it hard to tell whether Taliban fighters were also entering the city. There is a fear of suicide bombers entering the diplomatic quarters of the city. And today's loss of Faizabad, capital of northeastern province of Badakhshan, was the latest setback for the Afghan government, which has been struggling to stem the momentum of Taliban assaults. US President Joe Biden urged Afghan leaders to fight for their homeland, saying he did not regret his decision to withdraw. He noted the United States had spent more than $1 trillion over 20 years and had lost thousands of troops. The Taliban advances have raised fears of a return to power of the hardline militants who emerged in the early 1990s from the chaos of civil war. They controlled most of the country from 1996 to 2001, when they were ousted by a US-led campaign for harboring the al-Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden. A new generation of Afghans who have come of age since 2001 fear that the progress made in such areas like women's rights and media freedoms will be lost. So, Chris, the news and the pictures that we're seeing from Afghanistan are as depressing as they are maybe predictable. Do you think that the US and allied forces are right to be withdrawing?
Yeah. I personally don't think they are. They shouldn't be withdrawn at this moment in time to the level in which they are withdrawing. Yes, they've got to go at some time, but I would have hoped for a more gradual, a more phased approach with plenty of support. And the salient point that you made at the Andrew, which worries me again, is the fact that in the last 10 years, women have had a certain level of dignity and respect restored into theirs. And if the Taliban then take control, these hard-fought wins, shall we say, will be pretty much eroded overnight. And that's going to be a sad indictment of America, and British forces moving out. But the other worrying thing as well is that while of the Taliban's control 10 years ago, they never managed really to take north of the country. And there are reports out that if you do take north of the country as well, it would satisfy many sort of like towns and villages, which are not under sort of like any control. So it's a worrying dimension to the fact that that there is little spoken about even a UN peacekeeping force, to try and place what's being taken away at this moment in time. And it's, sadly, it's going to be an ever-changing story that we're going to be talking about from, the weeks to come.
No, that's a very good point, Chris, and we will definitely come back to this story. And there's a curious connection thinking of the history of Afghanistan and the history of the involvement of forces led from London and from Moscow and from Paris and the pursuit of the great game. And yet we're seeing allegations of Russian spying in Berlin today. And in fact, we'll move to, for our next story, we'll stay in Germany, because a German nurse suspected of injecting saline solution instead of COVID vaccine has been arrested. Authorities in northern Germany appealed to thousands of people to get another shot of COVID vaccine after a police investigation found that a Red Cross nurse may have injected them with a saline solution. The nurse is suspected of allegedly injecting the salt solution into people's arms instead of genuine doses between the 20th of April and the 3rd of May at the Rothhausen Immunisation Centre in Friesland, a rural district near the North Sea coast. Whilst saline solution is harmless, most people who got vaccinated in Germany in March and April, when the suspected switch took place, are elderly people at higher risk of catching the potentially fatal viral disease. Police investigator Peter Beer, speaking earlier at a news conference covered by German media, said that, based on witness statements, there was a reasonable suspicion of danger. The motive of the nurse, who was not named, was not clear, but she had aired sceptical views about vaccines in social media posts, police investigators said. It was not immediately clear whether the suspect had been arrested or charged in the case, which, according to broadcaster NDR, has been handed to a special unit that investigates politically motivated crimes. Chris, this is such an unusual story. What do you think's going on here?
I honestly think that it's quite clearly it's a woman who, a medical worker who is a committed anti-vaxxer. So she's able to continue doing her job and largely been untraced until now. It's a strange one. The fact that there was she had been putting out content on her social media, which would suggest, anti-vax material. I would say that is what it is. It's nothing more sinister than that. So it's good it's been caught. It's said, I mean, as in it's been found out now, and people have been offered the once more, just to be sort of like belt and braces, just sure. The thing for me is, if she substituted it with saline, do with the original vax? What was she doing? Was she just flushing it down the toilet? Was she selling it? Do you know what I mean? So, again, it's another story that hopefully will get fleshed out.
No, there's obviously lots of questions to be answered here, Chris, and we'll follow this story too. But returning to the health sector in Scotland, our next story relates to the expansion of access to naloxone. Services and individuals who are likely to witness drugs overdoses are being urged to have their say in a consultation on who should be able to supply and administer the life-saving drug naloxone. During the coronavirus pandemic, in Scotland, families of those who use drugs, as well as a wide range of professionals who work in non-drug services, have been allowed to legally supply take-home naloxone kits to anyone likely to witness an overdose. This was made possible after a change in guidance issued by the Lord Advocate. In normal times, naloxone, which can reverse the effects of an opioid overdose and save lives, is only legally available across the UK on prescription or from certain drug treatment services without a prescription. A Four Nations consultation has now been launched to amend current legislation and permanently widen access to naloxone to all those who come into contact with people who use drugs. This includes police, nurses, midwives, and prison officers. However, the consultation also asks for suggestions of individuals or services that should be included in that list. The Scottish Government wants all those affected by drug use to have access to the medicine without fear of prosecution, including families of those at risk and a wide range of professionals. So, Chris, the situation relating to the untimely and unwelcome deaths of those who are using drugs in Scotland is obviously a very high political priority, and is a regular feature in news conversations and political debate. It strikes me from this story that we're talking here about a Four Nations consultation being launched, whereas it could be argued that the situation in Scotland requires rather more than consultation, it requires action. Do you think the Scottish Government is right to be participating in this, or should it be pressing ahead with the changes that we'd already put in place during COVID?
Well, no, I think we should pressing ahead with the changes that we have put in place, but also we should be cooperating again with the UK government. Because any inroads that we can make in order to save lives, I will take. Personally, I would have taken, and it seems pointless, for want of a better word, spit the dummy out at the UK government, just because they've all of a sudden decided to cooperate in this foreign approach to tackle this issue. I mean, it's well. Again, you'll need to go to you'll find lots of content about the UK government are so hesitant to allow Scotland to adopt the best that we have actually found out works Portugal, and I firmly believe it's because it suits the UK government to keep on labelling us the sick man of Europe, and it suits their agenda, it suits their narrative, it's the bully Scotland, and so if they're going to ease up that with their boot, then we'll take all the help that we can get, but at the same token continue to advocate for the likes of consumption to be available. There was a story last week that Angela Constance was prepared to go in and defy the UK government and some safe consumption rooms. That's what I want to see. I want to see radical policy, and I like to see an attitude. If you don't like it, UK government, we'll be in court. But I think Scotland needs to get a wee bit more arrogant. With Westminster, the times I feel they part moan a bit at times and stuff like that. They could be a wee bit more forceful. And when it comes down to drug deaths, everything should be done. It's no holds barred as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely right, Chris. And it struck me this week, there's been some reporting around the availability and the use of defibrillation machines, which, as we know, are not because the technology is cheap and it's delivered in a way that anyone can use. The number of defibrillators around in our communities is significantly higher than it's ever been before, with sports clubs and shopping centres and all schools golf clubs, all manner of locations having these machines installed. And it strikes me that naloxone is such an important thing in preventing death that we should be, to your point, should we be considering expanding the availability beyond those who you would expect to come into contact with drugs users to an even more wide range of locations in order that we can the life-saving drug is available as quickly as possible?
I would almost definitely have with you there, Andrew, because quite rightly you highlight point of. I mean, I've seen them in ridiculous places. Do you know what I mean? Which has left me scratching my head, wondering why, and who the hell's got from it. No, mine's not tishing, but yes, with this again, I may come across as sounding, ranty and radical, but it's a situation that's close to my heart. The loss of life in any such way, shape, or form, be it due to drug deaths or be it to suicides or even just poverty, is totally avoidable. I can't express enough is the fact that the UK government, if they don't allow Scotland to do something to prevent death, they have to qualify why they see it acceptable to allow death. If you think of it on that scale, then I think that you're coming from the myself.
That's a good point, very forcefully made, Chris. Thank you. And our final story this evening is that the Scottish Government is making £100 million available over the next 5 years to support social landlords across Scotland to install zero-emissions heating systems and energy efficiency measures across their existing stock. Reducing emissions from homes and buildings is one of the most important things we can do to help end Scotland's contribution to climate change. Achieving emissions reductions in buildings will require over 1 million homes to convert to using zero or low emissions heating systems by 2030. Scotland must rapidly scale up deployment of zero emissions heating systems, such as heat pumps and heat networks, if we are going to meet our legally binding targets to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. Statutory fuel poverty targets require that in 2040, no more than 5% of households are fuel poor, and no more than 1% are in extreme fuel poverty. It is therefore imperative to take action to cut emissions from Scotland's homes in a way that supports and enables the eradication of fuel poverty. The funding invitation for 2021 has a minimum allocation of £20 million to support social housing landlords across Scotland to use energy efficient, zero emissions heating systems, to retrofit or to refurbish their existing housing stock. So, Chris, there's a number of components to this story, but principally as the attention on the climate and the climate crisis grows, not least in the run-up to the COP26 conference in Glasgow later this year. Do you think that the Scottish Government is going far enough here in terms of addressing the challenges of retrofitting and upgrading the heating systems in social housing?
No, I don't think that. They are doing what they can do, but I don't think it's going far. No, because there are private owners in Scotland who, to my mind, reading this consultation from the Scottish Government, who won't benefit from that. And these are low-wage families, they're single-parent families, families in deprivation. I can't hold myself back and not mention the families in Falkirk affected by the poor choice of heating that they have, which is forced upon them by the Falkirk Council, that are left with horrendous fuel bills, because there are difficulties getting the boilers converted over to gas, and all the rest of it. So, if this initiative helps them, then that's great. But we have to be thinking about, as well as thinking about the environment and all of this, have to be thinking people, who are struggling on poverty wages, 0-hour contracts, people who are suffering debt because they can't heat their house, or even put on the lights and things like that. Some of the things that like you and I just take for granted. I would seriously hope that these people are eligible for this scheme.
Absolutely, Chris. Absolutely, Chris.
That would go up, because at the end of the day,
absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Now, that is the news in Scotland at 7 this evening. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs and culture. If you would like to support us, and we would like you to support us, then please consider subscribing or donating to Broadcasting Scotland. You will find the link to do that on the screen now. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work and promotes the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. Meantime, we will be back tomorrow at 7 o'clock with the next edition of Scotland at 7, presented by Rebecca, so please tune in and join us then. Rebecca will also be speaking to Ian Blackford MP on Friday about the road to independence, so please look out for that too on Broadcasting Scotland. I'd like to say very many thanks to Chris for joining us this evening and for sharing his thoughts and wisdom and experience. And I'd also like to thank you for joining us all on Broadcasting Scotland this evening. I hope that you have a very peaceful evening.